Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. Homies, homegirls, homeboys, home trans, all the work from home listeners out there. I'm Naresh Fissa, along with my co-host Adam Schrader. And today we have two guests with us. They're coming on at the same time. I've actually known them for several years. We worked at some point at the same company, Agora Publishing. Probably at different times. That's where I started my career. And they do their own thing. They are extremely, extremely well known in the expat living space, in the overseas investment space, and just in the kind of financial publishing space in general. So it's a real treat to have them on our show. We have Kathleen Peddicord and Lief Simon. They are co-founders and publishers of Live and Invest Overseas. Kathleen is also the author of How to Retire Overseas, Everything You Need to Know to Live Well for Less Abroad, and the co-author with Lief of the new book, which we're gonna talk about both books on the next two episodes. The new book is called Buying Real Estate Overseas for Cash Flow and a Better Life. Get started with as little as $50,000. Kathleen and Lief, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Hello, how are you guys?
Great to be here.
Doing well. So really looking forward to the interview. We've had a couple of episodes on real estate and how people can invest in real estate while working from home. That's what Adam and I, that's kind of a secondary source of income for us. It's real estate investing, specifically single family homes. And that's what we've focused on up till date. But I wanted to get you guys on the show because of your new book, Buying Real Estate Overseas for Cash Flow, because I think the book and your ideas and concepts in the book help people who work from home. So let's start with that. How can people get started investing in real estate overseas while working from home?
Well, that's one thing that we do is, try and do some of the due diligence for people. We've been at this for 25 plus years, have contacts in many countries that, alert us to deals. We have for the business, Live and Invest Overseas, developers that we work with to market opportunities. And so we're always out there looking, and then that's what we alert our readers to. So that's one first step, but we do definitely recommend seeing a property, boots on the ground kind of thing, to use an overused phrase, which isn't very possible right now in the COVID world, and not easy for people even outside of COVID world sometimes to travel to these countries. But it's a good idea to get to know the market on the ground. Like investing in the States, I wouldn't buy something from Florida without spending a little time in Florida to know the neighborhoods kind of thing. And so doing your due diligence on the internet gets you a long way, and we get you part of the way. But I would still say, take your laptop with you. Maybe if you're working from home, spend a week or two when you can fly again in a location that you're interested in overseas, and get to know the market while you're working from your hotel.
Well, exactly. In this era when so many people all around the world are working from home, once travel is possible again, borders are reopened and planes are flying again, you can take your job with you while you go and hang out in a market where you think you might be interested in investing in a piece of real estate. Get to know the market, get to know the lifestyle there, get to become familiar with pricing, because one of the biggest challenges of buying in another market outside the United States is a lack of a multiple listing service, which means that the burden is on the buyer to come to the conclusion of what a piece of property should cost, because you can't run comparables. You can't, stop into an agent and ask for a range of what should XYZ property with these specs, what should I expect to pay for that per square foot, per square meter. You can't do any of that. So you do need to spend time in a place, especially if you're considering buying not only for profit, not only for cash flow or straight up investment, but for any personal use. We really strongly recommend that you make sure you like the place, because a rental property on the beach in the Dominican Republic, for example, just to give a random example, it can become just a burden and a carrying cost if you decide you don't like the Dominican Republic and you dread every time you have to go there to meet with your rental manager and check the property, for example.
Now, you touched on one of the things that that I find kind of scary about investing overseas. And like personally here in the United States, I have properties in 3 going on 4 markets. Never been to see any of my properties. Never plan to go see my properties unless something crazy happens or I go to a property tour or something. Just because I have you get the bank loan, and as you're doing that, you get your appraisal, you get your home inspection, you've got Google Street View. You have all these tools now where you can kind of see your property. But now you talk about overseas not really having the MLS to connect people with. Do you still do, what's the financing like there? And do they still have like the appraisals and the home inspections that give you a general idea about the property, or because there's no MLS, do appraisals just not happen over there? It's kind of a lot all thrown at you at once.
Yeah, there's a
lot of loaded questions.
There's a lot in there. Let's start with the financing. Most markets overseas aren't going to have mortgages available to non-resident foreigners. There's a handful that you can qualify for. The terms won't be the same as you get in the U.S. Rarely are you going to find a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You're looking at 20, 25 years, generally variable rates in most markets. And so a couple of markets, and the loan to values are going to be maximum 80%, but probably 60 to 70% is what you're going to look at. So just a few markets where you can find financing. Panama is one, Dominican Republic, Portugal, France. There's one bank at the moment still, I think, offering financing to non-resident foreigners. New Zealand has been possible in the past, but I'm not up to date with that market. And then there might be a couple of others, but otherwise you're looking at either seller financing, which is more and more common as more and more foreigners, expats are buying property when most of them paid cash. So when they go to sell, if they don't need the cash for another purchase, you can get some short-term financing, usually 3 to 7 years from a seller, or developer financing. We're expecting more developer financing after the COVID eases up. So the developers are all around the world in need of buyers at the moment. But again, developer financing is going to be shorter term, maybe maximum 10 years.
And even direct seller financing. We have several times negotiated terms, carrybacks of different forms with direct sellers, not beyond just the developer, if you're not buying into a development per se. But it is possible in a lot of markets to negotiate with direct private sellers. And again, I think it is more common today than it was when I started writing about this 30 years ago. And it's going to become more common, I believe, starting in early 2021, markets around the world are going to become much more buyer friendly, because as travel restrictions ease and borders reopen, and the world kind of comes out of hibernation at whatever point in 2021 that starts to happen. And especially as another thing happens, a lot of countries have put moratoriums in place on paying back financing, mortgages, bank mortgages, and rent even. This is very common in Europe, for example. But these moratoriums will lift in early 2021. And so when they do, and people with financing suddenly have to start paying off their debt again, and people who have rental properties are again having to pay their debt again, but aren't getting their rent because they haven't been getting their rent because the renters didn't have to pay. This is creating a lot of, I think it's going to be pent up urgent need to sell, to move a lot of property. I think suddenly in the first and into the second quarter of 2021, a lot of inventory is going to come on the markets for these reasons, and sellers are going to be very motivated. So it's going to become much more of a buyer's market in the first half of 2021. We kind of got off track there, but we can try to go back to your original questions.
That I think got covered finance, but right back to multiple listing services. If we want to cover that next, yeah, the U.S. is hugely transparent, although I think a lot of the information is very skewed. We're in the U.S. right now, and have been looking at some properties with the idea of my mother moving houses, and you look on Zillow one day at her house, what the value is, and then you list it for a higher price, and look on the next day, and all of a sudden Zillow's saying the house is worth what it's listed at. So I don't quite trust those systems altogether, but it's certainly more transparent than you'll find overseas. And so you've got to ask your real estate agent, ask your real estate attorney what prices are, and again, kind of be in the market and try and dig down to the local level rather than what we would call the gringo level.
Well, and I think maybe to get to the heart of your question, which is, no, it's not the same buying real estate in other countries as it is in the United States. And yes, it's more complicated, and the burden is definitely on the buyer, on the investor. So all of the safety nets and all of the efficiency tools that an investor and just any real estate buyer can take for granted in the United States don't exist in almost all the rest of the world. And that's a really important starting point. I don't think it should scare anyone off, but you definitely want to know that before you start shopping, because you have no recourse. There is no home inspection the way that we have it in the United States in most of the rest of the world. We can tell very funny stories. Our first property purchase together was in Ireland 22 or whatever years ago, and we tell a very funny story about, we found an old house. I wanted an old stone country house to renovate. So we found one, and we went to our attorney and asked if she could help us organize a home inspection. She didn't even understand what we were talking about. She said there was no such thing as inspectors, but her husband, who was an architect, could recommend somebody who could come have a look and give us a report.
A civil engineer. So
he went out. I don't think the guy was a civil engineer.
That's what we were told.
Anyway, he went out.
It said so on the invoice.
And then a few days later sent us a report, and the report was 9 or 10 pages, not standard as you would expect in the United States, but it was a stream of consciousness, random recommendations on the house, including things like the living room could do with better drapes, and the landscaping needed to be cleared out and cut back. A lot of random, useless.
It was decorating tips.
It was, yeah. Landscaping and decorating tips, useless information. So Lief and I didn't know what to make of it, and we were still naive enough at 22 years ago to think, oh, well, we'll just figure this out on our own. We bought the house, and we don't regret it. This was one of the greatest purchases of our careers, this house we bought in Ireland, because it's where our son was born and we raised our family, and that connects to an important point. But let me finish this thread real fast. The house turned out to be a disaster, like money pit. Could have made it into a movie disaster. It was so rotted, wet rot, dry rot, every kind of rot. We had to strip every piece of wood from the first floor out. It had rising damp, which meant the first 6 feet of the house was so wet we had to treat it with special chemicals. Crazy stuff that took a year of renovation that we did not expect. That's not to scare people off again, but that's what it means to have no home inspection industry. Now, to take that and twist it into a different perspective. Again, that purchase turned out to be one of the best of our careers and of our time together, both personally and as investors. We made a lot of money off of that. We bought at what we thought was a high point of the Celtic Tiger market, but the market continued to appreciate at ridiculous rates the 6 years we owned the house, and we sold it for 2.5 times what we had invested in it. It was a big success. But more than that, we lived in that house for 6 years when our son was born and raising our daughter. And this, to me, gets to the real point of looking to me, and then Lief can speak, and I'll stop speaking for a minute. But the big advantage of diversifying your investment portfolio in this way into real estate overseas is that it isn't only about making money, it's diversifying your life and your lifestyle, and it will open up, expand, enrich your life in ways you can't imagine, but that I believe will turn out to be some of the greatest adventures and experiences of your lifetime. But you can also make money.
So whenever you're going in and if you're getting financing, do they have anything at all similar to an appraisal so the bank says, yes, we will finance you? Or do you just go in and say, hey, this guy wants to sell me a house for $1 million, give me 60% value?
There are appraisals required by the banks, and much depends on the market. So a lot of the horror story level things we talk about are in the less developed markets. So say Latin America in general, and even each country is going to be different. In Europe, there are more standards, even though still no MLS. And then there are regulations and disclosures that have to be made in Europe, like with regard to lead paint and some of the things you see in the U.S. Not so in Latin America. But the appraisers, if you want an appraisal on a property in Panama, you tell me what price you want, and I'll get you an appraisal that says that. So it's not really a regulated thing.
Okay, got it. So let's talk a little bit about actually doing this. So let's say someone's listening to our show right now,
right.
and they haven't already been scared off by the whole idea.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. It doesn't seem as simple as working from home and earning money. But let's start with the markets to look at. How can people go about? I mean, the world is a big place. I think over
especially with no MLS, the world's a big place.
Right. So let's take a step back, and I'll tell you how I would approach this, both with my knowledge, but if I was beginning again. So I think it was Adam said he has rentals in 4 markets. Adam, I'm going to presume those are long-term rentals.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we mostly talk about for overseas is short-term rentals, so vacation rentals. There's a few reasons for that. One, typically in the right market, you can get a higher net yield from a short-term rental. But of course, that requires a rental manager. So your next question is going to be, how do you find a rental manager in these markets? And you can find them in different ways through your real estate agent. Again, talking to your real estate attorney, usually they're connected, and also just asking around to other expat owners in the market. And so there's short-term rental opportunities. There's pre-construction opportunities, and those were really big in 2005, 2006, 2007, until in 2008 everything fell through the floor and people lost their deposits because they couldn't sell or flip or do anything with their pre-construction. So that's a risk, as I would say leveraged properties are in general. And then we talk about agricultural investments as well, and we've been able to find some developers who put together turnkey opportunities for individuals. So depending on what you're looking for, a yield from a short-term rental, long-term rentals in other markets, in international markets, we don't recommend for most people because the tenant laws are much stronger for the tenant in most other countries, and evicting someone who's not paying is going to be more problematic. With a short-term renter, they're a tourist, they're coming into the country. Typically, if it's a foreign tourist, some countries have good internal markets, but they're coming and they're going, and so the risk level there of someone overstaying and not paying is less with a short-term renter. So there's the different types of investments you may want to get into. We also look at hard money loan opportunities with different developers in countries as well. So you have all those different categories, and then once you decide the category, and that's what Kathy was getting at, pick a market that you're interested in spending time in. We have people who will chase potential yields. At one point in Mongolia, you could buy pre-construction and then expect to rent at double-digit net yields. And you could do that never going to Mongolia. But what happens when something goes wrong, or if the person who sold it to you is no longer in business to be the rental manager, or who knows what, what do you do then? So it is better to pick a market where you would enjoy visiting, and also picking a property that you would enjoy spending time in, so that a lot of our readers are buying vacation homes that they rent out when they're not there. So it's a lifestyle slash investment.
I want to talk a little bit. I actually own a foreign, and I'm sure you're familiar with the teak timber plantations.
Uh-huh.
And you're probably partners with like Joel Nagel and Mike Cobb. And so I actually own one of these plots of land. And to be quite frank, I just kind of jumped in without knowing a whole lot about it. And I know this is kind of the opposite of what you guys said earlier. But what I do just in investing in general, whether it's investing in stocks or investing in real estate within the United States, is I find people who I trust and I see what they're doing, and then I'll just do what they're doing. So if Warren Buffett is buying up Procter & Gamble stock, then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to invest in Procter & Gamble. Even if I know nothing about it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. If in this case, if Porter Stansberry or Steve Sugarud are investing in these plots of land through Joel Nagel, who I know personally and who I trust, then okay, let me do the same thing. So I bought one of these sections, I think, as they call it, in Nicaragua, and they sent me the pro forma and what they expect to yield after, I think, 25 or 30 years. And I was like, you know what, let's just go ahead and buy one and see how it goes. Steve Sugarud said something nice about it in a piece, so why not? Let's diversify. Can you talk about this style of investing, but also this specific teak timber plantations and how lucrative they can be and why they are good investments?
Sure. So timber definitely is a good investment. If you look at the risk reward curve, timber's always up, in the upper right hand corner on its own, with higher reward and less risk, or less volatility at least, because trees in a down market, you don't have to cut the trees; they can keep growing. I mean, that's what the cliche is. And there's different types of tree plantations at this point. Teak has been around a long time. Teak's been a plantation tree since the 1600s or something. The Dutch started in Southeast Asia. And the ones you're talking about in Nicaragua, there's also one that they have in Panama, and there's others in Panama. I own timber teak in Panama in a couple of different places. And at 25 years, because it's a hardwood, teak is a longer term investment. So if you're buying when it's being first planted, like they had in Nicaragua, it can be seen as, well, you're a young guy, so it could be seen as a retirement play, or for older people, it can be seen as a legacy play for the kids or grandkids. And so we know a lot of people who are buying these things and sometimes putting them directly in the name of the grandkids, so that they have money to go to college or buy a house or whatever. Timber typically should have an IRR, an annualized return of double digits, so say 11% to 15%. I've seen some projections for wood other than teak at 16 and higher. And so there you go. The other options are softwoods. We know a group in Colombia that's doing timber for, eucalyptus and acacia, and that's for biofuel. And their technology that the forest manager is using has them harvesting the trees in year 6 or 7. And so it's a shorter turnaround time for the cash flow. It's the one downside about timber is you really don't get paid out until the trees are cut. Teak has some thinnings along the way where you get some money, but the real money comes at the end, at the 25 or 30 year mark.
And these timber, teak, other kinds of wood investments would be a really great example of an exception to the general rule recommendation we make of, go and take a look at the market and the location and the property before you buy. But a timber investment, a teak investment, et cetera, is definitely one that can be made without having to get on a plane and go have a look for yourself, based on the recommendation of someone you trust, just as you were describing. And that is a very sound strategy for certain kinds of real estate purchases, in addition to timber, to be made purely for investment. And
Right.
that is definitely something you can do without having to invest in the time and et cetera in the travel. It's when you are looking for any personal use component. If you're intending or wanting to be able to use the place at all, if it's a rental and you're thinking, well, boy, it would also be nice to be able to spend a month or two in that place a year, then you wouldn't want to buy until you go see. But there are for sure exceptions to that.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this a little more. My main concern, well, I told you the pro is a guy like Porter Stansberry, Steve Sugarud. They invest in this, and I feel very comfortable knowing that nobody wants to rip off or scam Porter Stansberry or Steve Sugarud. It's just not a good idea. So that's why I was like, okay, they're doing it, so let me go ahead and do it. But like you said, the time horizon, you're basically investing. It's like a down payment. I think I paid like $6,500 for this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting the money down, and you don't see anything really until maturity, 25, 30 years later. So my main concern is, how do I know? Like, I don't know any people who got in the 80s or early 90s and said, oh yeah, I got all my money back, or I got 10 times what I put in back. How do we know that this is real and that the returns in the pro forma are going to hold up 25, 30 years from now?
Well, the good news with teak is it has been a plantation tree for centuries, and so the key to teak, the key to any timber is growing it where it should be grown. So in Panama, which I have long time experience with Panama and with teak. One of my good friends in Panama actually has a 3,000 hectare plantation, and he was one of the first people we ever met who was doing agriculture in a way that was accessible to individuals, and he was doing it because of a residency rule in Panama that allowed people to invest in a reforestation project and get residency. And so he did his research, and I learned from him. Teak needs a dry season. That's when the core hardwood gets hard, and it needs certain kind of soil and certain kind of drainage and things like that. So if you're going to work with the group, you want to make sure that they're planting in the right place, using a forest management company that knows what they're doing with that kind of timber. There are, of course, teak prices on that are available on the internet, so there's some transparency there.
The trouble is, though, you're buying today. What's the price going to be in 25 years?
Exactly. So what's the demand going to be? But I think we can all agree there'll be more humans on the planet in 25 years, whether we want them or not, and there'll be more demand for quality, high-end goods, which is what teak goes into. So the bottom line then becomes the numbers used in the projections. So you want to take a look at those.
Right. And also you want to invest with someone who you feel confident, not only, as Lief is describing, knows how to grow that kind of tree, but also has the infrastructure and the resources to sell the harvest as they are cut.
Right.
And that's, of course, that's the real key, the exit, which is selling the wood. And our friend in Panama has experience actually growing harvest to full, or trees to full harvest rather. And to answer your question, most honestly, how do you know? And I'll say this, being a big believer in timber investments, and as Lief says, we hold several in different countries and are actively always looking to make more of this kind of investment because we believe in hard assets. It's our preferred investment type. And I like wood. We like wood. We like what you can do with wood. So we believe in it long term. But that said, our friend in Panama has been doing this for 25 years, I guess, and he's brought trees to full harvest and not been able to sell them, and struggled because at the time that the trees were harvested, the market was being, the price wasn't what he thought it should be or he needed it to be. But here's the other thing. So he didn't sell.
Right.
So when the trees are harvested, maybe the price isn't what it was projected to be, and maybe it isn't what you need or want it to be to get your ROI. Well, you don't have to sell the wood that moment or that year, which is another thing we like about it. You can, the market will change, the global value, what people are paying for teak changes, and you can hold on to your wood if you're able. Lots of factors come into play, but if the guy managing it is able to hold on to the harvest until the price is more where you want it to be.
So going back to just investing in the properties and everything, you mentioned not having all of the, harder to find prices and all that stuff. I can build a pro forma on properties in the United States and say, I invest this, I know my property taxes are going to be this, and this. This is going to be my return. So how can a person who's living in the United States and doesn't know, even if I go and visit, someplace and I like the place, how do you go about formulating your investment pro forma necessarily to see what kind of returns you can actually expect? And then once you get into that investment, how do you factor in your exit strategy? Because I have one client I'm working with has a property in the UK, and he's told me it's been like over a year that they've been trying to sell this place because it's just taken way longer than he was expecting coming from the United States. So what kind of exit strategy have you seen people have around the world? And then how do you make sure when you're getting in that you're getting a sound investment?
So on the getting in part, if you doing your numbers, what the purchase price is or what the offer price is, and you can do for short-term rentals, you can do some decent research online, especially with Airbnb now. Although I loathe Airbnb, they've screwed up so many markets. But with Airbnb, you can go on and see what similar properties are asking for nightly rates and things like that, and get an idea of a projection. Again, your rental manager, you should probably find one before you buy, would be my recommendation. Should be able to give you good information. And what we really recommend going into a market is, the first step isn't finding the property, it is finding your infrastructure. So it's finding the real estate attorney, finding the agent, finding the rental manager, and then ask the rental manager, where should I be buying and what type of property should I be buying to get the highest occupancy and best net yield. And we did that going into Paris decades ago. And the rental manager said the best properties to buy are 2-bedroom properties, because there's an abundance of studios and 1-bedrooms, because those properties are just less expensive. But if someone needs 2 bedrooms, they need 2 bedrooms. And if you're going with 2 parents and 3 kids, you want a 2-bedroom place, not 2 separate apartments. And so that was their recommendation. You get higher occupancies because if someone needs only 1 bedroom, they can rent a 2-bedroom, and you can lower your price if you need to. So asking those questions going into the market will help you figuring out your numbers. In the book, we talk about this in bigger detail. Short-term rental management fees can range from 15% to 35%, depending on what's included. So you have to know the market that you're getting into to know what those costs are going to be, and then put them into a spreadsheet, which we also have a basic one that we offer in the book. But so it can be done. The property taxes, the carrying costs, all that stuff, you can get that information from the real estate agent and or your attorney. The one thing to put out there, Americans are consumed by the idea of property taxes. In most countries, property taxes can be a fraction of what they are in the U.S. in some cases like Belize, they're practically nothing. You buy a property in Belize and you can be paying $10 a year in property taxes.
As far as property management goes, so let's say we buy the real estate, or in my case, the timber. I have a property manager who, the company I bought through, it was Mike Cobb's company. They just kind of took care of everything. It was kind of turnkey. I honestly haven't done anything outside of sending in a check and signing a few papers, which is how I like to do things.
And for agriculture and timber, that's what you have to do. You don't want to become a tree farmer or a fruit farmer or something like that.
Right. I do want to visit the property though, because I think my name, they have my name on there, like on the tree. So I want to take a picture, just go visit just to take a picture under my name. But as far as managing the real estate, just real estate in general overseas goes, do you just go through the company who you're buying from, or do you have to do research online as far as property management goes? How does that process work? How can we identify property managers and get them to basically do all the work?
So more often than not, you'll find that the real estate agent that you're working with to look for property will also, if it's a short-term rental market. So if you go looking for property in Playa del Carmen, the real estate agent is either going to also have a arm of their company that does rental management, or they'll have a rental manager that they will refer you to. And that's because they know investors need a rental manager. So that we've known a lot of real estate agents that got started selling to foreigners and then realized, oh wait, I can sell more property if we'll do the rental management and make it more turnkey for people. So Argentina was a good example of that. In 2001, December 2001, they had their currency crisis. In 2002, we bought 3 properties from a real estate agent that I was referred to and liked a lot. And I had found an actual rental management company. That's all that this other company did. But in the process of buying those 3 properties, by the time they were ready for rental, the agency that we bought from had set up a rental management because they were hearing from more and more foreigners because of the crisis, and realized that they can sell more properties that way. So, and they did a great job managing the rentals for at least the first couple of years that we had them.
When you're looking at the United States, you look at turnkey properties, new construction, we're looking anywhere from like 6 to 8% cash on cash after we take out like vacancy and maintenance and management. Rehab renovated properties, we're seeing like 8 to 12% potentially. What kind of returns are y'all seeing on the properties that you're buying abroad?
So from the way I look at it is from a net yield perspective. A lot of people out there talking about foreign properties talk about a gross yield, which doesn't do any good because the expenses from one market to another can be extremely different. And so, and of course markets change. So we bought a property in Portugal in 2015 when that market was still really at its bottom. And on our purchase price, and so this is cash on cash because we're paying cash. There was no financing involved. We were getting about 7 or 8% the first couple of years. Then we switched rental managers because it's a long story that I won't get into now. Had a new rental manager. With the new rental manager, it dropped to like 5 or 6% on the purchase price, which was still good. But in 4 years, the property went up by 125%. So
more than doubled.
Yeah, it more than doubled. And so my yield on my new value had dropped to like 3.5% or something like that. And so at that point we took the decision to take the gains and sell. So that's typical for how we look at these markets. If our property is going to double in 4 or 5 years, that's great, and we're happy to sell and get out. In some markets that doesn't happen, but the yields continue to be good. I look for 5 to 8% net. Sometimes you can get into markets, Medellin, Colombia, for example, in 2010 when we were first there. Some people were getting as high as 18% net yields. That changed quickly because property prices got pushed up.
Right.
And
it's possible to get double-digit net returns. We have, for example, in Panama City, some years on a rental there. We have, but it's normally a distortion in the marketplace for some reason, because of valuations or there's something going on.
Or huge rental demand, which was one case in Panama.
So where your net return can spike and you can enjoy, a 12, 14% net return and we've done that in different markets over the years, but we don't count on that. We know it won't last. And as Lief said, we're happy net 5 to 8% over the lifetime of a rental. If you hold it for a decade or more, you'll have some years where you're getting 11, 12% net, and maybe some years you're getting 5% net.
Right. And not counting any potential appreciation.
All right. Kathleen Peddicord and Lief Simon, co-founders and publishers of Live and Invest Overseas. Kathleen is the author of How to Retire Overseas, Everything You Need to Know to Live Well for Less Abroad, and co-author with Lief of the new book, Buying Real Estate Overseas for Cash Flow and a Better Life. Get started with as little as $50,000. You can find them at liveandinvestoverseas.com. That's liveandinvestoverseas.com. They'll be back on the next episode to talk more about actually living and investing overseas rather than just the real estate. So stick around, come back on Friday for that. Check us out, workfromhomeshow.com. That's workfromhomeshow.com. Check out all our previous episodes. Also, go onto your podcast platform, give us a review. Let us know what you think of us. Then take a screenshot and send that review to hello@workfromhomeshow.com. We'll send you a little free goodie, one of Naresh's books, I do believe it is right now. So go do that, and until next time, keep on working from home.